Good afternoon and welcome to today's NWCR's Removing the Liberal Blindfold for this Wednesday, the 13th day of January in the year of our Lord 2021. As long as yesterday's update was, it surprised me that it loaded to the sites as fast as it did. I actually had it onto Rumble by about 4:30, which was way earlier than I thought it would be, as it was over 25 minutes long. Today's update comes from Western Journal and comes with this little gem of truth that the Democrats won't like. The headline almost says it all. New polls deliver bad news for Trump-hating left and mainstream media. Even without saying anything, don't you just love it? This isn't working out like the left thought it would. After days of relentless attacks by an unholy alliance of the establishment media, Democrats in Congress, and the titans of big tech in the wake of last week's violence at the nation's capital, American voters appear just as deadlocked about President Trump as they were before the November 3rd election. And that is a bad sign for liberals hoping an anti-Trump campaign would boost the Democratic agenda. A pair of polls released Monday give the picture. On the right, as reported by The Blaze, pollster Frank Luntz surveyed 800 Trump voters over the weekend and found an almost unanimous 91% of those who cast a ballot for Trump would do it again if another presidential election were held today. That number dropped to 65% when the question concerned the 2024 election, Luntz found, but the responses indicate Trump's base is essentially unshaken, which we all knew it would be. Considering the amount of vitriol that has poured from the country's television screens since the Capitol incursion, it should be a message to the elite of what passes for news in this country that their tactics just are not working. Granted, it's a smallish poll, and Luntz is known primarily for his work on the conservative side of the aisle, but things are much the same elsewhere. From the left, a Politico story Monday bore a headline obviously aimed at pleasing a liberal readership. Poll: Americans narrowly back Trump's impeachment resignation. It was true as far as it went, since the story noted that about 48% of those polled agreed that Congress should begin impeachment proceedings to remove Trump from office compared to 44% who disagreed. A separate question worded somewhat differently found that majority of those polled, 53%, said they would approve of the House of Representatives voting to impeach Trump compared to 40% who said they would not approve of the idea. The story continued. Support was nearly identical for Senate convicting Trump in the event the House brought impeachment charges against the president. Now that might sound reassuring to the contingent of liberals who never reconciled themselves to the results of the 2016 election, but it shouldn't, considering the poll of the 1996 respondents included 813 Democrats to 595 Republicans, with 588 independents. It had a major margin of error of 2%, according to Politico. The outlet noted, public opinion of the resignation question broke heavily along party lines. More than 85% of self-identified Democrats, as well as about half of the independents surveyed, said Trump ought to resign. Fewer than 1 out of 5 Republicans agreed. The parties were also nearly evenly split on Trump's impeachment, with 81% of Democrats in favor of Congress moving forward, while 84% of Republicans opposed the idea. Self-identified independents were also torn, with 44% opposed to impeaching proceedings and 41% in support. In other words, even after the undeniably inexcusable events at the Capitol on Wednesday and the anti-Trump rhetoric from the Democratic politicians and supposedly unbiased news media that followed, even after the giants of social media have tried to smother the president and signaled their disapproval of their conservative beliefs, like, say, free speech, the country remains deadlocked. For the incoming administration of so-called President-elect Joe Biden, that doesn't bode well. Even with the support of Democrats in both houses of Congress, this is still a constitutional republic, no matter how hard progressives have tried to destroy it. And that means politicians will need popular support. One telling question in Luntz's poll showed how hard the support is going to be for progressives to earn. Asked to name the biggest threat to national security, the Republicans' top responses were socialism, the radical left, and the fake news media. Now, if big tech's tyranny were thrown in there, it would pretty much sum up the Democratic Party's power structure. It is a good bet that 75 million or so Americans understood exactly what they were getting when they opted to back an incumbent whose administration saw an astonishing rebirth of the economy, triumphs over the enemies like Islamic State group, and strides in peacemaking in the Middle East that would have produced universal hosannas if Trump had been a Democrat. The doubts of Trump supporters about the 2020 election, based on compelling accounts of the election fraud, are not the same as the Democrats' refusal to accept Trump in 2017, which relied on a hazy tale of Russian collusion, which was disproved, birthed by Hillary Clinton and the Democratic National Committee, that fell apart of its own weight after years of investigation. The liberal doubts about the accomplishments of Trump's presidency that the Democrats and their establishment media and big tech allies are trying to foster with the boost from the unwarranted events of January 6th are not in the same league. Last week, like the weeks and years before, the liberals had a virtual monopoly on the news Americans saw and the prospective Americans were supposed to see with it. It isn't working out the way the left would like, but it's a very good bet that it never will. And now to remove the liberal blindfold here, folks. The Democrats always have a plan. And when their plan doesn't work, that is the only time that they actually grind to a halt. But they only stop for one reason and one reason only. And that is to try and figure out why their evil little plan didn't work. It never occurs to them that maybe God put his hand into it and stopped it. No, that never occurs to them. The only time that they believe in God is when they think he will do for them what they want him to do. Sadly, that's not how it works, and sadly for them, that isn't God. That is the deity that they try to worship, and it's called power and money. The left has no love for our great country, and they have no love for our president either. It is like I said yesterday, the left would destroy America just to get rid of Trump. And over these past couple of weeks, you've seen exactly them doing just that. And they've actually pulled in a few of the rhino Republicans with them. But if you looked and remembered the things that they said over the summer, then you would realize just what I am saying here. The left hates America as it was founded, and they are working overtime to change it to what they want. A communist country where the only ones in charge are them, and the people were nothing more than peasants who couldn't do anything without them, the leaders. The left hates the idea that the American people are so self-reliant and that we could get along just fine without them. So they want to pass laws that would make that impossible, and in the process taking away our God-given rights and freedoms. And we're allowing this, folks. If the left hates the idea that families have children that come from God, and God gave those children to parents to raise them and teach them, the left, remember, thinks that children belong to the community, and they don't like that at all, which is one of the reasons they do not worship God. I have been warning you all, just like Dan Bongino and Sean Hannity and Rush Limbaugh and others have been doing for years now, that the left is not good for America, and we have to start voting them out of office. The sooner the better. Because America is not too big to fail. And after years and years of the Democrats trying to destroy America, we are getting closer and closer to that end. If only we would just wake up and realize that America might just have a future ahead of us if we voted the Democrats out instead of the dark hole to fall into that the Democrats want for us. We have to realize that the left just has to be brought down. I have told you all over the last decade, we have to stop them. And that includes Pelosi, Schumer, Maxine Waters, Cuomo, both of them, Michelle Grisham, Newsom, Whitmer, and all the others in our government who are just too stupid to realize America is a good country. I am sick and damn tired of hearing the likes of AOC and the Hildebeest telling us what we should do. They don't have a clue. And we have to remember this, folks. We are not a democracy, like the Democrats constantly say. A democracy is what we have seen over the last 4 years. Mob rule. We are a constitutional republic, and the American patriots know this. And because of that, we will not be ruled. See you again tomorrow, and God bless you all.